You are watching Outnumbered. I'm Julie Banderas, and here today, Jillian Turner, Fox News correspondent, Molly Hemingway, senior editor at The Federalist and Fox News contributor, Leslie Marshall, syndicated radio host and Fox News contributor, and joining us today, Brad Blakeman, my old buddy from years past. We used to do a show or two all the time. Former deputy assistant to President George W. Bush and advisor to the Bush-Cheney campaign. Great to see you all on this holiday week. I'm going to start with you, Molly. First of all, a lot of contention, a lot of pressure on Mitch McConnell. He says the Senate will start the process. Just start the process. Now, remember, New Year's is only a couple days away, of considering President Trump's push to increase these stimulus checks to $2,000. But he has made no assurances. And the president took to Twitter, not so happy about that, warning Republicans that they should support the increased checks unless they have a political, quote, death wish. And Leslie, McConnell acknowledged, in addition to the stimulus checks, that the president wants several things lumped into this bill. He wants Congress to address Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. It provides protection for companies that host third-party content on their platforms like Twitter and Facebook, and we know how the president feels about Twitter. The president also wants Congress to look into election security. But Brad, as you just heard, said the coronavirus relief bill should stand on its own. I think you might agree with him. I mean, should they just put aside the president's wishes and just focus on these relief checks?
Absolutely, and unless Mitch McConnell is lobbying for his own losing leadership, or maybe he's signaling he wants to retire, Republicans are not doing a good thing, and neither are Democrats. If this is not a clean bill, it has to be a clean bill. I agree with Brad. Whether left or right, let's look at Georgia specifically. Approximately 15% poverty. African Americans in that state, who comprise more than 30%, more than a third of the state, they've been hit especially hard, disproportionately, by both COVID and this pandemic, physically and financially. And when you see ads that say, want your $2,000 stimulus check? Vote Democrat. Vote for Warnock. Vote for Ossoff. That's what's driving the numbers. And when you look at the numbers, Democrats have an advantage right now. You have a lower turnout right now in rural areas that showed up in the general election to vote and re-elect President Trump, which they failed at, obviously. And in Atlanta and the surrounding suburbs, you're seeing an uptick in the number of voters that are coming out, and that looks right now very good for Democrats. So I don't know what Mitch McConnell is doing. This is hurting Republicans and quite frankly, hurting the American people who are tired of being used as pawns on a chess game, and they want their money. And one last thing, whether it's 600, 2,000 or somewhere in between, the government giving stimulus checks is pretty socialist.
The campaign to recall California Governor Gavin Newsom over his shutdown orders getting a big boost after individual donors have offered tens of thousands of dollars each. And an Orange County firm has pitched in $500,000. All this as the Sacramento Bee says that fending off the recall is a major challenge for Newsom's new chief of staff, and his advisors are reportedly keeping tabs on the signature count. Meantime, a GOP lawyer who has sparred with Newsom says, quote, the hypocrisy of allowing lobbyists secured exemptions like film crews get to operate, but restaurants don't get to operate. These types of inequities are really fueling the energy behind this grassroots movement. Meantime, despite some of the strictest stay-at-home orders, California's hospitals have been pushed to the literal brink. One of LA's major medical centers actually had to shut its doors to all ambulance traffic for 12 hours over the weekend. They had no beds, 0 beds available for at least 30 patients who needed intensive or intermediate levels of care. Leslie, do you think Newsom has pretty good reason to be worried here?
You know, he shouldn't be worried, and I think it's terrible. No offense, Brad, I live here. You do not. And right now, I asked my husband, who's a physician, how bad is it? And he said, let me give you an example. At the height of the first surge, there were 30 patients in one of the hospitals he works at here in LA County with COVID. Today, there are 240. Those are real numbers. Those are real people. People are dying from COVID in this state every few minutes. I lived through the last recall. It was a disaster. Removing Gray Davis and replacing him with Arnold Schwarzenegger, a man who was a movie star with name recognition, 0 political experience, turned our state worse than if they had left Gray Davis in charge. This is not the time to be changing the guard. Certainly, there should not be film crews or businesses right now that are going to affect our ICUs. As you mentioned, Julie, we have ambulances being turned away. We have patients being put in the gift shops, parking lots, auditoriums. We have 0 beds left in many areas, San Joaquin Valley and other hospitals here in LA County. This is not the time. And it's not the leadership that's to blame, quite frankly. It's the people who will not wear masks, will not social distance, and will not stop gathering.
I'm hoping not just in Staten Island or New York, but around the country where tyranny and overreach are ruining family and businesses will follow our lead and stand up, rise up, and open up.
They try to crush the little man. Little men and women across the country who own small businesses should take on the government, because every so often the little man wins, like we did here.
Owners of a New York City bar who declared it an autonomous zone planning to reopen today in defiance of COVID restrictions. This as Max Public House in Staten Island now claiming victory in court following legal battles, expensive ones. Last month, the bar stayed open, prompting the arrest of one owner as hundreds of supporters demonstrated outside. And while business owners are expected to follow the COVID restrictions, a Democratic official here in New York is accused of ignoring COVID rules after he was seen shooting pucks on a hockey rink. He is denying any wrongdoing, saying he was practicing by himself, although the video appears to show otherwise. I do believe there are other skaters on that rink. Meantime, this is just one of the reasons why folks are angry over these lockdowns. The panel is back, and do we have Leslie, hopefully? Yes. Okay. Yes. Leslie, I'm going to go to you. Is there a bit of a bias here? And I mean, should these business owners continue to pay the price to politicians, closing them down, and continue to spend thousands of dollars in legal fees to try to fight to keep their business doors open?
Well, there are a couple of issues here. One is hypocrisy. I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. I've said it before, even on this program. If you're a leader, you lead by example. The bottom line is, you can't impose any kind of a ban or any kind of rules or regulations or guidelines and not follow them yourself. On the other side, with the business owners, they're not spitting in the face of politicians. They're spitting in the face of people who are vulnerable and may not know it to COVID, and they're spitting in the face of the healthcare workers who are on the front line and that we're seeing city by city and state by state are overwhelmed in trying to contain this pandemic.
We have very few ingredients. We have tomatoes. We have, how do you say it? Cucumbers.
That's Hilaria Baldwin forgetting the English word for cucumber while cooking on the Today Show. Alec Baldwin's wife is now facing backlash over accusations she faked her Spanish heritage. Newly unearthed yearbook photos show Hilaria graduating from a Massachusetts prep school, get this, 1 year before she claimed she first moved here from Spain. So the lies just get deeper and deeper, and this is a lesson for all our children at home. Once you tell a lie, it just spins out of control. Leslie?
Why?
I mean, she's got her celebrity status thanks to her celebrity husband, Alec Baldwin, who is now coming to her defense. But yeah, she's the wife of a celebrity, and then she, in turn, became a celebrity. So then what would be her motive?
I think that people who look, Madonna has an affectation, right? She has a British accent. She's not British. She developed it after living in London for some time. I think that people who attach themselves to something from their past, or even to something they're not even connected to, just leads to the desire to belong, to insecurity. And I would say I agree with Molly's first sentence is, why is this a big thing? Why is it a big thing? Alec Baldwin is an actor, and she is his wife, a yoga instructor, and a mom. Most people don't know who she is. And she's lied, and sadly, to your point, Julie, yes, we should be teaching our kids don't lie, but sadly, our president lies. Everybody lies right now. People lie on Twitter. People lie on blogs. There's fake news. Sadly, that's where we're at in America today.
All right. That's all the time we have. But I do commend her for being a mom of 5 children, because I don't know how that is done. I don't even think that's humanly possible. So
I'm with you there, girl.
I got to give her credit where credit is due. No matter Hilaria or Hillary, she's a mom to 5.